All right. Um, so, just bear with me for a second. I seem to have lost my notes. All right, everyone. So I'd like to introduce our main speaker for the evening. So Jon Voge is from Copenhagen in Denmark. He is the principal consultant at Inspire, and I won't tell you too much more about him because he does introduce himself in his slides. So with that, Jon, I'll hand over to you. And as usual for everyone, please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and either Gilbert or myself will interrupt Jon when it's an obvious place to do so. But obviously, Jon, it's your presentation, so if you want people to rather just come off mute and blurt out their questions, that's up to you.
I'm open
All
to
right.
either.
All right, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's a pleasure being back. As we just discussed in the pre-call, the three of us. It's been 9 months or so since I was here last time talking about translytical task flows. And I think today's session is the perfect sort of successor to that because there's also right back elements of the fabric plan item that we'll be diving into. I just wanted to shout out again also that shape map GA thing. That's crazy, huh? I think it was 11 years in preview. That's just nuts. Anyway, let's hope that Fabric Plan doesn't have as long of a preview cycle. It is still a preview item. I'll flag that continuously throughout the session and obviously the implications of that. So take what you see at today's session as a glimpse into what you can do in production in the future, right? Because we are still a little early stages here. Another disclaimer on that matter, because Fabric Plan is so new, I've spent quite some time with the tool, but there are definitely nuances that I don't. I mean, I wouldn't call myself an expert, right? I don't think a lot of people truly can call themselves fabric plan experts. So there are definitely things I cannot answer. I'll do my best to answer the questions that you might have, and I do think that I'm one of the ones who've played around with the tool more than most. Anyway, with that disclaimer out of the way, a super brief introduction to myself. Name is Jon or John. I'll take that too if Jon is weird for you guys. Principal consultant with Inspire, yeah, and a Fabric data platform MVP with Microsoft. I work centers mostly around trying to enable front-end users, business people to do more with data, more so than really coding the back-end side of Fabric data platforms. It's a lot about governance and access management, a lot about how do you make the most of that platform that the talented engineers and architects are building. That's what I do most. And then also, obviously sort of a new spin on my role is also how do we take that platform and make it useful for agents and AI. That's also a recent passion of mine. But let's save that for a future session. Today it's the Fabric plan that's the focus, and I have a little bit of a tiered agenda for you guys. We'll start with a pretty high level. What is Fabric plan? Why should you care? What's its merit? And what does the alternatives in the market kind of look like is what we'll return to at the end after a deep dive on how do you actually get started on Fabric plan. So, and excuse me for sniffling a little bit. I'm just all of a sudden realizing I have a little bit of a cold coming, maybe, but I'm sure we'll be fine for the session. Just apologies in advance here. What is Fabric plan? Fabric plan is I was about to say brand new item. It's 3 months old-ish. I think it came into public preview in April or March or something like that this year, and it's a little bit of a weird, almost Kerberos-like three-headed beast because truly Fabric Plan consists of three different sub-items. So even though Fabric Plan is a single item that you can create in a Fabric workspace, you'll see how that looks in a second. You are able to, within the Fabric Plan item, spin up planning artifacts, power table artifacts, and intelligence artifacts. And they each serve their own purpose in this whole umbrella term that is Fabric Plan, but can each also be used separately without the adoption of the other tools, truly. And I think a disclaimer up front here is I don't think all of these three tools are equally mature at this point, so there could be good reason in only adopting one or two of these at this point. So just to sort of dive into each of these three, what is the planning artifact of Fabric Plan? Well, it's an attempt at moving your EPM, or God forbid, as my notes say, Excel planning tools into something that is data platform native with uh, data being read from and written back to SQL DBs and Fabric. So it's an engine. It's really very much like having a spreadsheet in Fabric with cell editing, but combined with a little bit of semantic modeling-esque columns, rows, fields. You'll see it when we get into the demo, what I mean more exactly. But it's a tool for creating budgets, forecasts, doing scenario modeling. I'm sure you could have other planning scenarios as well than just these. But the true value prop here, as I see it, is the whole connecting to the existing data model that you have in your Fabric data platform and being able to add new data from to the business user pretty familiar interface that more or less is like editing a table, right? So obviously the component has kind of two sides to it. There's an editing view in which the creator of this plan will design the shape and form of the plan, which fields to include, which rows and columns, which dimensions and facts are we planning here. And then there is the consumption side of things, which is about then filling out information or adjusting fields, which could be done, through sliders, as is kind of seen in the screenshot, or through simply double clicking a cell and putting in a number, as you know it from Excel. So that's the planning feature of Fabric Plan, and I do of course have a demo where you can kind of see this in action. It's very feature rich, and I must admit, incredibly confusing to get started with, because while I compare it to Excel, I think they do obviously create some levels of abstraction or try to apply commonly used planning features. And it might just be that I'm not, a finance planning expert. Some of these things just go a little over my head. But there are definitely nuances to this that I, at least myself, have not quite comprehended yet. Power table is then the second component of Fabric, and this one is a little more familiar to me. And this one is maybe also where we have kind of the natural continuation from my translytical task flow session back in the fall of 25 at your user group. Power table is essentially taking those, well, master data management solutions that you might have today, again in Excel, or MDS on top of Excel, or Power Apps standalone or embedded in Power BI, or a standalone master data management or EPM tool even, right? If you are maintaining master data today in something that's not platform native, Fabric Plan gives you the option of kind of bringing that back into the platform. So if you already have an ingest pipeline and create a SQL DB that has dimensional data, you can connect to that and edit that table live from within Power Table through, again, super spreadsheet Excel familiar type interface that you see in the screenshot here. But you could also start from uploading a CSV file or an Excel file and create the original dimension that way. What I think is extremely cool about the Power Table solution here is that it comes with a ton of sort of just these really nice to have add-ins on top that makes this quite enterprise ready from the get-go. So if you're used to building Excel sheets or Power Apps for that matter and trying to use that for master data management, I am sure you know the headache that is governance, everything from auditing to validation to what do you call that, sort of approval flows, that kind of stuff. All of that is just baked in, like GUI set up, very easy to set up rules about who can edit what. There's full audit log on everything. Very easy to set up, even chained approval flows. Who's the first approver? Who's the second approver? You can use security groups for everything. And then there's even a super comprehensive form setup that allows you to expose forms for accepting data input into these tables. So you don't necessarily need to have people logging into Fabric to do that. And a Power Automate-esque automation setup on top, where you can define triggers and flows to interact with basically anything on condition, right? Whenever somebody adds a new row or edits this column on a row, do X, Y, and Z. We'll have a quick look at some of these things, but truly there's too much to show in one session here. So we'll have to focus our attention a little bit. As you can kind of tell on my voice here, I'm a little more excited for Power Table at this point than I am the planning side of things. But that could also just be, my personal skill set and me having dealt with these problems that I think Power Table actually pretty expertly addresses. I've dealt with those so many times that I am pretty hyped for this product. The last of the triad, the last head on the dog here, intelligence as an artifact. Also quite interesting value proposition, but it enters a difficult market here because truly it's a little bit of a direct competitor to the Power BI report artifact. You can create just straight up visuals, IBCS style, on top of your existing data estate in Microsoft Fabric. That alone is a pretty compelling, I think, starting point for a visualization tool that we can natively within this tool pick from 100+ different IBCS style formatted visualizations. It's kind of like what you wanted visualizations in Power BI to be, if you ask me, to be honest. There are caveats. We'll get to those. It's not super nice it's not a great UX experience to format these things. That's a different story. But the value proposition is solid here. What really takes the cake, though, is that it integrates very naturally with those two previous artifacts. The planning sheets and the Power Table sheets can be added as artifacts on an intelligence report. So you can basically combine the data input and the reporting in one consumption experience, which I think is actually a really cool way of doing things because they do integrate very well with each other. It also has, the nice to have easy exports and built-in commenting solutions, so you don't need to build a separate Power App for that. We're kind of exiting that paradigm. I think it has a lot going for it, but as you'll see in the demo, it leaves a little to be desired on the creator experience of things. It's really not a match for Power BI on that for now, at least. Before we get into the demo, I do just want to flag again, this is a preview feature. If you want to use this, you will need your admin to jump into the admin portal and find the tenant setting that enables the plan item. You should also know upfront that to create and edit these artifacts, you do need to create a couple of cloud connections upfront to SQLDB artifacts and or to your direct lake or direct query semantic models if you're using those and not just import models. There's good reason to use those models in sort of write back scenarios in general, right? Especially if you want data to kind of flow back into your solution. So you will likely need to hit those two bullets at some point. And then it requires somewhat extensive permissions on a workspace level or semantic model level, at least for creators to be able to set up these connections. So if you were dreaming of just handing front-end users the Fabric plan item for them to create themselves, they would need at least build permissions on your semantic models. I do think this task will likely fall on the same people who are building semantic models anyway, so I don't believe it'll be a big issue, but worth flagging nonetheless. And then just as an FYI, there are a couple of sort of blockers for using this tool that obviously, and I think that's a good thing, semantic models in my workspaces are not supported. Private link or on neither workspace or tenant level, that having that would prevent Fabric Plan from ever working. And then just a heads up that obviously this tool works best on a properly modeled star schema. you will not be able to take full advantage of the planning tool if you don't have a column marked as the date column in your semantic model. It's going to look for that metadata tag in order for you to properly populate matrices with collapsible date hierarchies. So you will need to apply. I mean, this if you weren't doing it already, this is going to force you to conform to semantic model best practices. I want to just take a step here and just make sure I'm not leaving any questions on the table before we get into the demos. I imagine most questions will likely pop up afterwards, but is there anything in the chat so far, Craig, Gilbert, that we need to address?
No, there's been no questions so far.
Cool. All right. Well, let's jump into it, right? I'll just find demo here. So I have here, excuse my poor demo data here. It's just some retail demo stored in a SQL DB in Fabric here. It's nothing crazy. I at least went sort of ahead and had, my favorite LLM generate some demo data for us. So it's not Contoso, but I mean, it's still just dummy data. If it wanted to load, be nice. I'd like to just show you the schema that we're working with, but perhaps the capacity is, there we go. Just to show you here, it's very simple. Disregard the write back stuff here. That's coming from the planning artifact. We'll talk about that later. But I just have a couple of dimensions here, a fact table, a separate table for budgets. That's it. Nothing crazy in here. Just to show you, I have a basic semantic model, right? Not semantic model here. This is obviously just a SQL DB, but I do have a semantic model on top of it. Retail semantic model, in which I have a bunch of metrics defined, just thrown into folders in the fact table. It's not nothing crazy here. And what I really wanted to show you was that I have here my dim date table with my date key, and I have my hierarchy and all of that mapped out. So those are kind of the prerequisites here. You could get away with not having a SQL DB pre-created for this. You could have a semantic model that's connected to a warehouse or a lakehouse or even external sources. And then if you want to do write back operations, what will happen is that the planning item will create, or you can, from the planning artifact, create your own write back destination for this data. But obviously, feeding that data back into your semantic model will then require a little bit of a modeling exercise. So I will say there are definitely scenarios here in which your solution will work best if you have a semantic model that is built on top of data that's landed in a SQL DB in Fabric for good and worse. We can talk more about those pros and cons later, but I think that was just a comment I wanted to make upfront. So when you have either a data source in Fabric, preferably a SQL DB in Fabric, or you have a semantic model that you want to build on top of, you can simply go ahead and create a new plan item in your workspace. And I probably didn't need to go to all items. I think I have it favorited. I didn't, so it's a good thing. Let's call this a Queensland plan. Put this in the workspace, just to give you sort of the full experience of what does it look like to create a new artifact here. I will, cooking show magic, jump into my pre-created solution in a second, but I think there's a little bit of initial setup here that does warrant just a quick show off. This is what it looks like when you have nothing in it. You'll notice there's this collapsible Explorer pane on the left-hand side. This is where all of your planning, power table, and intelligence sheets, they will show up once you create them. And if you're not used to this, you will get used to it, but I constantly found myself wondering in the beginning, where did my sheet go? Well, it's probably in the collapsed Explorer pane. So first tip is remember the Explorer pane exists. If you can't find your stuff, it's likely out there. When you want to get started, you have kind of two different entry points. You can either start with data, you can start by creating a new sheet. I find that I rarely start from scratch, but there is definitely a case here where you could also just create, a master data management table from scratch and treat it like an Excel sheet, create a power table from scratch here, I'd say the usual starting point for people would be to get data. And connecting to a semantic model is the most obvious choice, I think. It will ask you to choose a connection at first. It will nudge you in that direction. If you don't have a connection shared with you, it will prompt you to create a connection. That connection that you create will need to be added to a semantic model before the semantic model will then be available for use in the second selector. So it's a little, if you haven't created the semantic model connection upfront, the cloud connection, and mapped it to your semantic model, you will experience a little bit of friction, a little bit of back and forth here, where you will try to connect, realize you can't, create a connection, have to go into the semantic model settings and add the connection, and then go back to your plan item to get going. It tries to help you, but it's a little wonky, I think. But if you already have a cloud connection, it's smooth sailing. You just pick it, you pick your semantic model, and you go ahead. Should mention here again, if you're running an import model and you have permissions on the model, you don't need that cloud connection. It's able to just leverage it right away, but obviously you lose the sort of liveness of your direct query or direct lake alternatives. All right, I've added my semantic model. It's now showing up in the right-hand side of my Fabric plan under this data pane. And this data pane warrants a little bit of a deep dive in addition, because truly what I think is a little curious here is that actually, from the get data experience, it made it seem like I could only connect to semantic models in Excel/CSV. I can actually jump into this query tab of data, click add, and if I go create from scratch here, I get a full Power Query almost experience, except it's not quite Power Query. It's just close to, where I can choose also JSON and Parquet files and transform data in a real sort of data query like Power Query like experience. It's really quite comprehensive, and this tool, this query editor, is not really described very well anywhere. It doesn't allow you to just connect, unfortunately, to any external source. You do kind of need to put it into either a file or an Excel or CSV file or a JSON or Parquet, but you could connect even to Parquet files. Unfortunately, not really to Parquet files stored in OneLake, unless you have the OneLake Explorer installed on your desktop, from which you could, of course, upload files directly to Fabric Plan. Really, what I'm doing right now is exploring all the anti-patterns for you. You shouldn't do either of those. You should connect to a semantic model or to an Excel that you want to kind of get rid of and instead integrate into your planning item and Fabric estate. With that said, it's a possibility. Let's focus mostly on having a semantic model in scope for our model. It's worth making sure the cache is accepted here. I do find the tool to be a little slow without it, at least while in editing mode. Once I have my semantic model in, I can go ahead and create a new planning sheet. And let's just call it Queensland Plan. We'll create that. And in here, it's gonna flag for me right away. I don't have a database connection set up, meaning that anything I create with the plan will not be saved or persisted anywhere. It can't write back to a semantic model. It needs a destination. So we can go ahead right away and set up that connection if we wanted to. Again, the same step is going to happen where you need to create a cloud connection. That cloud connection needs to be able to see your SQL DB, and so you'll have the same kind of a little frustrating initial setup loop when you do this. So I've now connected to a backend artifact which does allow me to write data back to the SQL DB I have that I showed you at the beginning. We're now on the planning sheet. We're connected to a semantic model. We're connected to the underlying database. And I can now start simply adding fields to my plan. And I do that by opening this field tab. And this is quite Power BI-like, right? I can go ahead and say, well, on my columns, I would like to have parts of my date hierarchy. Let's have year and quarter. And on my rows, let's put from our product table something like category and subcategory. And then let's just put a simple revenue metric, total revenue or something like that on the values. And it's going to start building out this matrix. And the loading time, depending on your data volume, can be, I think, a little below par compared to Power BI, but all in all, not too bad. But it has, I mean, Power BI, you saw the recent notes from Gilbert, right? We're starting to get resizable column header stuff. That's already in here too. It works pretty well for a matrix, I would say, with collapsible columns, collapsible rows, totals pretty easily added. It's a little overwhelming, I think, with the amount of features here, but they're mostly concentrated in this ribbon at the top where you can do most of, common Excel patterns. If you wanted to pivot your matrix, do top-end evaluations, add filters to your matrix here, you can do that. I think the strength of the tool here is really especially when you go to this modeling tab where we are able to add forecasts and scenarios and start manipulating the data that we are reading and writing that manipulated data back into the destination, right? So just to give you a quick example here, not gonna give you the full end-to-end financial planning exercise that obviously takes too much time, but I could create a new measure here that I called revenue forecast, budget, or whatever I wanted to do, right? Uh, this is linked to total revenue. Okay, do I need to zoom out to why do I get this bug? Create. Then I can set up a period here, as the period that I'm going to forecast here will be, the data that I have in the model is up till and including 25. So it automatically suggests me to progress with 2026. It even automatically registers that I'm at a quarter level in the report. Had I added the month field too, it would be talking months here instead of quarters. Pretty neat. And then I'm able to actually say, for this forecast scenario, how do I want that forecast to behave? Well, I could split this up into multiple periods and say, well, first of all, I'll first define Q1 and 2 for 2026. And I want for that period, I want to mirror the performance from Q1 and Q2 in 2025. Then I can add another range and say, well, then from Q3 to Q4, the way I want to calculate my forecast should be as, if this didn't bug on me, the average of the entire year of 2025. So you have a lot of different options for creating forecasts already. You could also have created, a computed column where you are provided with your own formula if that's your jam. Then I would just not have copied my total revenue measure, but created a separate measure and added that as the forecast. And what you can see now is that it's now gone ahead and added, it took a little scrolling, but it now added 2026 to my matrix view with pre-calculated values for my forecast. The forecast will also appear a little confusingly in 2025, and hiding those is a little bit of a frustrating exercise of either multi-selecting or clicking on each individual. Actually, it doesn't. It requires me to hit each individual one and hide those. But I can see now that, as expected, my forecasted revenue in Q1 2026 and 2 mirrors exactly the values we see in Q1 and 2 for 2025, whereas the third and fourth quarter values, they are the average of the entire year of 2025. And of course, it's possible to go in and manually override. that's kind of the whole thing with these forecasts, right? That you can go in and you can manipulate those and say, well, add 1 mil to this, and it overwrites and it automatically distributes whatever manual edits you did down on the child values of your hierarchy. So if I went ahead here and added something to the grand total, it's automatically going to distribute that addition to the books, the clothing, the whatever I have in my retail model here, right? Similar, same story. If I went ahead and added something just on an individual subcategory, it's gonna edit those. If I wanted to leave something out, I could freeze columns as well. I can if this wanted to, I forgot where that option is. It's somewhere here that you can freeze your columns so that those edits, they don't hit all of your, if you don't want the distribution is all I'm saying. Yeah, you can go ahead and say, oh yeah, here it is, lock this cell, lock all children. And you can change, if you wanted to, change how that distribution is done. Maybe you wanted to distribute your change based on a different measure, right? So lots of really cool options here. You can create additional scenarios. It will appear at the bottom as a new tab. I can make my adjustments here and say, okay, in this scenario, books are really outperforming what we did in our base scenario. I can change the layout out of this to a tree view where I take my forecast and compare it to the total revenue and get a really nice alternative sort of grasp on how these things are flowing. Change the granularity here for a second just so it's not as comprehensive. Make edits from this view too. See how the flow changes. It's a pretty neat interactive planning and reporting experience in one. And I mean, as you can kind of tell here, we're hitting the tip of the iceberg here, right? There's so many different options up here in terms of how you can create and manipulate rows, columns, period scenarios, time series forecasting, create driver models, goal seeks. It's very comprehensive. Um, the one thing I do wanted to just show here as well was it's very easy to add that write back destination. It doesn't do that just because I added the connection, but now using that connection, I can connect to my write back table. I can select an existing table or create a new one, and any changes that I make in my plan will be written back based on the filters and the write back type that I define up here in the ribbon. So I can decide myself whether I want wide format or long format write back, which is also really useful depending on what you prefer, right? Do you prefer to just have a super narrow table of 3 columns and filter on those columns, or do you prefer a little more of a wide view of your data? Planning, as with the other artifacts here, also comes with integrated comment functionality. So if you want to add comments, you just find the comment buttons on any item, assign it to whoever needs to react, and it will show up on that green in the comment pane that will be available. Also, right now I'm only in editing mode, but in reading mode, you can do everything I'm doing on the canvas. You just can't edit the way it's being presented, but I could do all the data edits. I could add comments depending on the permissions I have on the item. But now whoever is assigned this comment can take action, and I could, as a manager, I could say, okay, Jon, you're responsible for explaining these budgeting changes that you've made, or you could add them by yourself, right? You can add your replies, and you can close the comments, and it works really nice out of the box. If I'm a user of this tool, I can save views as bookmarks. It's not too dissimilar from custom views in Power BI, right? But it's just nice that it's there. So from the security tab at the top, you can distinguish between what kind of access you give people on this table. Excuse the horrible resolution I have on my screen here. That's by virtue of being at a client space today where I couldn't sit at the desktop for the session, but I'm sure you can kind of get an idea here that that you can generally speaking, you can. Why can I not add people here? I think I need to first share the solution generally with. Oh, I probably need to save it first. You can add people and give them access very granularly to only edit forecasts or scenarios or general data input, only provide comments, only allow these users to do write back. Now I can do it because I saved. So I could say Jon is allowed to do write back. But of course, like with semantic models, we're kind of creating a new security layer here, right? So, I mean, you're maintaining security in yet another spot. It's nice it's there, but and it respects row-level security already built into your semantic model. It's not like that. But because this tool allows you to invent entirely new data on your platform too, it needs to have these security features as well. So it's a little bit daunting, I think, to go into this planning world. But investing some time into it, I think you'll be surprised at how feature-rich it is. And I truly think this can replace a lot of stupid sheets out there that lives in Excel today, especially, right, or Power Apps. I'm definitely deep diving a little more on this than I intended to, thinking about all the other stuff I want to show. But let's just do a quick round of questions here, if there is anything so far, Craig and Gilbert.
No, it's super silent on the chat. But is there anybody who has any questions at this stage? No.
Right,
No,
we'll
nothing
continue
at
then.
this stage. Yeah. Yep.
That's
Thank
totally
you.
fine. In the interest of time, I will just switch to my pre-cooked example here, where I have, this is just a plan with a couple of different sheets already sort of added to the environment. I have here a power table sheet that I created and based on a semantic model. You can see this is now me in reading view. So in reading view, I don't have access to the top ribbon. I don't have access to anything but the bookmarks and the comments on the right-hand side. Just kind of nice for you to know what would you expose to end users if you were to share this. If I have permissions to do so, I can jump into edit mode. And now I can unlock sort of all the things that are in here. So I just wanted to show you what it looks like if you connect to a dimension that exists in your environment. Here I already made an edit and I renamed my sports category to sports, and we can try and change that back, right? Because what I have here is a filter that has, I just wanted to show you this works like Excel, right? If I wanted to, I could show the entire dimension, see all of the data, but if I wanted to rename all the sports entries back to what it used to be, let me just select. Oh, that one jumped out on me. Just select specifically sports. I'll show you that you can make an edit here if you want to, right? Obviously, you might not want to edit your dimensions like this, but there are other master data management scenarios where you're creating master data for small data products and that lives in Excel or in Power Apps. That's what I'm talking into here. You usually wouldn't be maintaining your entire DIM product in here, but I can now copy this 200 rows down if that's what I wanted to. It's a little less drag and drop than Excel. It's not as user friendly as that, but you can see now I managed to rename all of these, right? What you might have noticed here is that what I've done here is set up a little bit of a review process. So this write back option that is added to this table, I already set up write back for my power table. It's somewhere. You do that during the initial setup. That's why it doesn't show here. But these changes are not saved yet. So I can go in and preview these changes, and then I can submit the changes for review if I'm happy with what I see. Okay, there's an error. What's the error? Value cannot be empty. It's because I went ahead and added the change to new rows that weren't there. Let's just make a change on a single row, submit for review. Changed one dimension value to sports. This is super urgent. whoever's is in charge of this dimension needs to deal with this today, so we can use it in reporting. Surprise, surprise! I'm also the reviewer for this change. So this will appear in my approvals, and I can go in as the approver and review all the incoming requests and see what's being changed, what are the modified rows, and only once I click approve does the actual write back go through. And the write back will be visible if I go into audit. I can see all the write back logs. You can see here just a second ago, Jon made an update. What was done? Super nice tracing that's possible to do just out of the box. You don't need to build this except set up the sort of initial write back destination and approval flow. And then you have something that's, in most cases, pretty solid, at least way, way, way more solid than maintaining this in Excel and just randomly shooting that up into the cloud, right? I haven't talked so much about the features for manipulating the tables that you add to Power Tables in general, but I think it bears mention that you can add both blank columns for adding comments in line if you wanted to, but in almost a Dataverse-esque fashion, you can add relation and lookup columns to other tables in your estate. You can add buttons, attachment columns that allows people to upload files or toggle instead of always providing a computed or manual input. And of course, you have the possibility of creating formulas as well that simply computes a metric. So again, very, very feature rich, I think. And while, Excel super users will find it annoying that you don't do X lookups the same way, I'm sure they will learn how to do a database lookup instead or something like that. Briefly wanted to touch on sort of some of those things that I mentioned at the beginning comes on top of this. You can, of course, do row level security, column level security on these tables. You can build forms on top of your tables to say, okay, instead of having people go into Fabric, let me instead send them something that looks like an MS form, asking them to provide data entry into these tables. I find that immensely helpful. I cannot tell you how many forms I've built for master data management solutions in the past. And then this crazy overkill, in my honest opinion, automation feature, which is super nice though, where you can, when a button is clicked on a row in a table, let that be the trigger, then do all kinds of weird actions where, you create records in a different table, or you delete records in a different table, or you update records in a different table using connections to do that. So you can kind of do chained or chain reaction style almost edits through your data landscape if you have those needs. So again, super feature rich. Before jumping to more questions, because I do want to get to sort of the more discussion-based things as well, like a quick demo of what the intelligent reporting artifact looks like in Fabric Plan. Let's just collapse this a little to get a little bit better view here of the report itself. I have here a report where I've embedded a plan artifact and then two IBCS style visualizations that pull on the exact same data. And now it's been a while since I tested this data connection and it has broken in the past. So I wonder if I start making edits to my optimistic scenario, if it will flow through. It's supposed to. So if I go ahead and change my books values, did that go through? If everything works correctly, it is supposed to reflect immediately in my chart here. I am not sure why it's not refreshing right now. Maybe that's the live demo ghost, or it's just that, oh, here, refresh data. Hopefully we see a jump here. Yeah, we saw books at least move over here. I'm not sure why the line chart didn't, but hopefully you saw that the sum of the optimistic forecast for books just changed. If I go ahead and go the opposite direction, you'll see this orange bar will disappear basically, right? If I refresh data again. So it was just to show you that you can sort of integrate visualizations and those write back enabled planning and power table artifacts in one and the same report. Books are now really small, right? The delta shows negative. It's cool that we can add charts here that are IBCS style. So, if I want to add a new chart, I can just pick from 100 different styles. I can add planning and power table. They have their own proprietary matrix table, Gantt chart filters, KPIs that they sort of use by default. A little annoyingly, that the customization visually is kind of split between sometimes being Power BI style in these panes down in this menu. Sometimes you need to right click to change how things look. Sometimes you need to go to the ribbon to change how a visualization performs and looks. It's not as intuitive as Power BI at this point. But if you're adopting planning, if you're adopting Power Table in Fabric Plan, it's obviously a great use case to combine it with a visual representation that fits your reporting needs. And feeding this back into Power BI would not be a smooth sailing, right? There would be no way of embedding your planning and Power Table. Simple as that. You'd be able to use the data, sure, but you could not put it into one and the same interface. So it's pretty cool. Difficult to make look great. I'll say that right off the bat. But in terms of general features, I am quite impressed.
Jon,
That was the demo. Yeah,
I have
sure.
a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Can you include it in a Power BI app or an org app at this stage?
No, unfortunately not. And this kind of actually dives into these general pros and cons. It's Fabric native, but they are licensing the IP for this product from a third-party vendor called Lumel. I don't know how you can call it Fabric native when you're licensing the IP elsewhere. I don't know what that contract looks like, but it also comes with the kind of obvious caveats that the integration towards the rest of the product suite is not quite the same as a true native Fabric artifact. Fabric Plan also not supported in deployment pipelines and that kind of stuff. I mean, it is kind of its own thing, while I mean you're not paying for anything else than CUs. We'll get back to that, but no, it also cannot be included in Fabric apps, at least as of now. I don't know if it's coming. The roadmap is also a little unclear, but no, that's not included. No.
Thank you.
You can see the general pros and cons here. The cons are mostly it's in preview. The licensing thing is weird. Steep learning curve, and then the write back is not to data warehouse, it's only to SQL DBs and Fabric, while Lakehouses kind of makes sense being read only and all. I would have liked to see the warehouse integration there, but I guess they've gone with the OLTP route, which makes sense for write back, right? But sometimes it's just a deal breaker for people with SQL DBs consuming interactive CUs and being able to spike your capacity usage in a completely different way, right? So if that's part of your sort of capacity and Fabric strategy in general, that you can't use SQL DBs in Fabric, you're a little bit out of luck here. On the pro side, incredibly feature rich, and obviously, even though it's not, I would say, fully integrated into Fabric, it's way better integrated into Fabric than your standard Excel spreadsheet or standalone Power App or standalone whatever else tool you have. So I mean, we're taking a step in the right direction here, and I especially am a fan of that Power Table that we had a look at before, right? Pricing wise, just wanted to flag here the way this works is every time a user like this, and this is when it's going out of preview. I think for now it's actually free, but once it's out of preview, the idea is each month, if a user logs in and uses read mode, it will start a charge. It will make a reservation, basically a CU reservation for the rest of the month for X number of CUs, like a constant usage for the rest of the month, to sort of simulate a license acquired for that user for that month. And same for somebody going in and making edits on a plan. So you will effectively pay a license fee. It's just going to be billed as CUs. So, I mean, if you're underutilizing your capacity at the moment, it's going to be free. But if all of a sudden you're going to add 100 Fabric Plan users to a capacity that's already close to capacity, you'll likely need to scale up that capacity or buy a new one. So be aware of that. I think that bears mention here. It sounded like there was a question, perhaps, that I almost forgot here, overruled.
No, you didn't forget. The one's just popped into the chat from Jorge.
Sure.
I'll try and read it unless you can see it yourself.
Please read it. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as I understand, backing the planned data in a database gives the ability to feed the semantic model with forecast values as a new source at a certain granularity, including forecast calculations in reports alongside other measures, question mark.
That is correct. Absolutely correct.
Okay.
And that's one of the strongest use cases for the planning artifact here, is that it becomes a much more governed way of feeding those manually or computed values into your semantic models rather than, say, founding those in an Excel spreadsheet. If you already have a good process for it through other tools, the case is not as strong. But if you're today using Excel sheets to do that work and relying on other less governed options, this would be a way to bring this more natively into Fabric. Absolutely. Very brief pros and cons by artifact here. I'm super impressed by the write-back performance and speed in general by both planning and Power Table. I'm used to dealing with performance issues in Power Apps when doing those write-back options, and that's just not a thing in planning and Power Table. For reference, I wrote back 60,000 records across many different time periods in a plan, trying to create a quite detailed, fine-grained forecast, and it did that in 5 seconds. It was just, a non-issue. It's easy to get started with these tools, but it's difficult to sort of get into the more comprehensive features, I think. We didn't run into too many bugs today during the demo, but I have found that working with this planning artifact, especially over time, I find myself having to save and refresh the page occasionally because some random unexplainable bug will just appear. It's a preview feature. You will just have to live with that for now. And then there are just, planning especially requires data to be in a very specific format. Power Table even is only to deal with certain data types. There are some binary and even some numerical formats it's just not compatible with at this point. I'm sure you can find the full list in the documentation, but these solutions are a little picky about which data you connect to. So you might need to go a little back and forth between your source and Power Table to get everything ready for going live. Once you are live, though, it works pretty well in the solution. You can get the slides afterwards, so I'm not going to go through everything here. Before diving into the last questions here, seeing we are running short on time, just wanted to make sure these links were thrown up on the screen. Microsoft Learn has its own plan documentation. It's very underwhelming. Link number 2 is what you wish the Microsoft documentation was. It's Lumel's own documentation for Fabric Plan, but it's just nowhere to be found. I don't know where I found the link initially. Maybe I just read the URL from one of their videos on Fabric Plan, but if you Google, it doesn't appear, at least not in Denmark. And then there's a pretty cool tool coming up where Khaled Chowdhury, a fellow Fabric MVP, is doing some great work in close collaboration with Lumel, trying to sort of share knowledge on Fabric Plan. And he's created a site called fabricplanning.io that includes a cost calculator where you can kind of see how many CUs and what kind of capacity would be needed to support a Fabric Plan solution for X amount of consumers and creators. Pretty cool. So check that link out definitely as well. The short URL is just fabricplanning.io, or you can click the link when you get the PowerPoint when I send that over. With that, let's have a last sort of look at any questions that might be outstanding here.
First of all, that cost calculator sounds awesome because that's always the first question that anyone asks,
exactly.
Right? Open forum. If you've got any questions, please feel free to just come off mute or type them in the chat, but feel free to verbalize the questions. Anybody?
while people are deliberating, I'll at least just add my personal take here that I think gone are the days, at least, of trying to create master data management solutions in Power Apps. I think that this kind of kills that. I'm not sure it kills, every single MDS solution out there or every single other proprietary master data management software out there. But at the very least, for me, this kind of kills the Power Apps case, because licensing wise, it's just much more attractive to put that into an existing CU paradigm rather than having to support Power Apps premium licenses to write back to Fabric artifacts. And then obviously also keeping sort of the development on a single platform rather than having to govern a Power Platform environment as well, if that was your use case. So I think at least for that, the planning artifact alone, not the planning artifact, the power table artifact alone has just a very clear value prop. And in my opinion, the planning artifact a little less battle tested in my case. We'll have to see if I can actually convince some clients to build actual products with that, and I'll come back with a revised statement on that later.
I think one thing I wanted to add is, while I don't have significant experience in the planning space, in my previous life as a consultant, I was involved in many organizations looking at financial planning solutions, especially those related to Power BI. And they were extremely hard to implement and extremely expensive. So it would, this certainly looks like a great, proposition, especially for, organizations that haven't already invested in such a solution to get started with something that looks like it's going to be fairly low cost.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is quite low cost, despite the fact that it sounds a little scary that a reservation will be placed, a CEO reservation on your capacity. It is quite a slim license fee, and the fact that it's very scalable. It's not like that it resets every month. I love that fact as well, that's kind of just built in, and you don't need to negotiate weird terms with a vendor about how licensing works here. I think that's pretty sweet.
I've got a question. With the new Fabric apps, another app, the customizable app kind of thing, how do you think this plays in? Because it's different, but it also writes back to like a SQL database.
Yeah, I want to say it's the elephant in the room, right? At least to the point where if your master data management / data input / planning requirements are sufficiently simple, then I think Fabric apps are a cool and probably to some extent cheaper alternative. I could definitely imagine building a Fabric app on top of the same kind of semantic model here, exposing some kind of value entry, value editing to end users with write back functionality to the SQL DB. All of that functionality is kind of already there, but the Fabric app will start from zero with regards to everything on the governance side, right? From security, besides respecting row-level security in the semantic model, but on the entry side of things, security, governance on logs and audits and approval flows and automations on top and form inputs. You need to code all of that yourself, obviously AI assisted in the case of Fabric apps, right? So I think it really only works for the very simple use cases, but for the very simple use cases, Fabric Plan is probably way overkill. If all you need is to expose a form to an end user to gather raw input for a bronze layer somewhere in a data platform, don't spin up a Fabric Plan for that. That sounds crazy. Create a small Fabric app with just a few entry fields, right? So slight overlap, but I'll say that this one caters a little more to the enterprise data entry planning, master data management solutions than Fabric apps does.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
Very good comparison though. Yeah, and I'm so excited for the Fabric app space. I mean, all the stuff that some of the talented people are putting out there and sharing right now, I'm blown away. If only I had time to do the same kind of exploration, because I feel like I'm falling behind. I know I'm not necessarily, but heck, they didn't even enable the functionality for the region that my current capacity sits on. So I have done a small test, but I had to spin up a new capacity to do it. And there's a little bit of a friction moment for me at the moment.
Yeah, Yeah, me too. I did the same thing. had to have a capacity in another region.
That's how it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions from anyone in the audience? All right. Well, if not, we will look at wrapping things up for tonight. So thanks everyone for attending. We've already got our speakers lined up for August and September. So I will probably tomorrow, or if not on the weekend, publish the next user group onto our meetup for August. And both of them sound like interesting topics. So look out for that. And we'll look forward to seeing you all. But most importantly, Jon, thank you very much for an excellent presentation.
Thanks for having me.
And this fabric plan looks super awesome. I agree with you about power tables and the possibilities that are around that. Master data management has been an issue as long as I've been in this industry, and that's a long time. Any tools that we can bring to the market that are going to make that easier, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, guys. Pleasure as always.
Always. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
everyone.
Have
we'll
a good
see you in
one.
about a month.
Yep.
Bye, guys. Bye.